Good morning. Hi, Tara.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Let me just adjust my new laptop. Can you hear me okay? It's all,
Yeah.
all new. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi everyone.
And I don't have my background set up, so I'm trying to remember how to blur everything. Okay. All right. There we go. Gallery. Now I can see all your beautiful faces. All righty. Okay, I'm gonna do a roll call in a moment. Let's see. A few people just coming on in. Okay, it's 10:01. My name is Jimna Miller. I'm the co-chair for the Autism Advisory Council. Today is January 17th, and it's my son's birthday. So I'm super excited for that, even though he had a 2-hour delay. So that's what happens with January birthdays. I'm going to do roll call. Sorry, bear with me. This is a different format for everybody. Okay. Do I have Yana Razumnaya yet? Have you joined, Yana?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Uh, do we have Marcia? All right. Representative Exum, Jason, will she be joining?
No, she's not
Melissa,
available. Sorry.
okay, that's okay. I know Melissa had Gagney, she had a conflict. Melissa Hoon. Do we have Andrew Amaro? Do we have Kimberly Mehrman?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, good morning. Do we have Lynn? Oh, actually, Lynn just emailed. She does have a 10 o'clock conflict. She's hoping to join late. Lois, good morning. I think I saw you join. Carol?
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Carrie? Dr. Schlegel?
Present. Hello, everyone.
Hi, good
Hello.
morning. Thanks for joining. Julie Wolf, I think I saw you join.
I'm here.
Hi. And okay. Kathy Marchione?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi. Brian Klimkowitz? Dorothy Papa Santini? Stephanie Bozak.
Here. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, good morning. Christoph Jaszewski. Ugh, I always butcher that. Chris, are you here? Okay, Jennifer Marco, I saw you
Good
join.
morning. Hi,
Hi.
everyone.
Ann Jeanette, she had a conflict. I knew she wasn't joining. Stephen, I hear you. Amy Dumont. I think Michael was going to attend in her stead, and he also his child had a delay.
I thought I saw Amy log in.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hi, Amy. Okay, sorry. Happy New Year.
Same to you, thanks.
Julie McKenna. Mary Beth Miller.
Good morning. This is Iris Peel.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that clearly. Who was
My
speaking?
name is Iris Peel on behalf of Mary Beth.
Thank you so much, Iris. I appreciate you joining. Okay. Just make a note. And Colleen Kursky, will she be joining, Iris, or no? Do you know?
I'm not aware. No,
Okay, that's okay. Judy Dow.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Shelley Means, will she be joining Judy or no?
No.
And we have, let's see. Tara, you're here, and Zani, are you able to join?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, it's Marcia Eckert. I'm here. I'm just dealing
You
with
are.
having no water. So
Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. All right, anyone's name I did not call on that's on the advisory board or any other agency member that I need to recognize.
I saw that Andrew joined.
Yes,
Oh, hi.
Andrew.
Hey Andrew.
Here. Hi.
Hi. Happy New Year. Okay. All right, anyone else? All right, fantastic. Okay, we are going to move to our agenda. Thank you, Tara, for posting all that. It's also on our OPM website now. Little bit different format, but that's okay. Let me just pull this up.
Next is just public comment.
Thank you. Okay, this time we will open up the floor for public comments for anyone that's joined from the public that wants to comment or address the council. Oh, you probably have to unmute yourself. Okay.
I don't have any hand raises or anything, so I think we're
Okay. We're good to move forward.
Yep.
Okay.
And then next is approving the November meeting minutes.
Okay. For meeting minutes, Tara had sent those out on January 10th. I'll just give a moment for everyone to refresh themselves. And if there's no additional revisions, then I do need a motion.
I'll motion to approve them.
Thank you. We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, approved. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, Tara, if you would help me.
Sure. So we asked Russell Blair to join us today to provide a overview and training on how our meetings are going to be run moving forward now that we are changing oversight from DSS to OPM. So we thought this was a good way to start off our new year. So welcome to Russell, and we look forward to his presentation.
Welcome, Russell. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. Thank you to Tara for the invitation. My name is Russell Blair. I'm the Director of Education and Communications at the Freedom of Information Commission, and my job really is to work with agencies across the state, municipal, state government, whoever's interested to provide training, advice on freedom of information. We do these training sessions not to add more work to what you're doing. I know sometimes it can seem like, oh my gosh, you guys are busy. Some of you have, jobs in state government. Some of you have jobs in the private sector, nonprofits. You're doing a lot of different things, wearing a lot of different hats. And the last thing you want to do is say, oh my gosh, there's more work we have to do. But freedom of information is the law in Connecticut, and every board and commission, every state agency, we all have to do it. But what I hope you come away with from today is, some advice and some tips on how, you can do what you need to do for FOI, but it doesn't become this big burdensome thing that is taking up all your time. I think, as we walk through it, you'll see that, that there's not really a lot of requirements. We'll talk mostly about the meetings piece of the law. Really, it's just about, public notices of your meetings, agendas, minutes, that type of thing. Just doing the work that you're doing, the important work that you're doing out in the open. Whenever I do one of these presentations, I just like to take a minute just to talk a little bit about, how we got to this point in FOI. If you didn't know, freedom of information has been the law in Connecticut since 1975. So we're coming up on almost 50 years where this has been, the law in Connecticut. And it really goes back to, post-Watergate reforms. Ella Grasso was the governor at the time in 1975 when the Freedom of Information Act was passed. And sort of the premise behind it was, we didn't want what happened in Washington with secret meetings and secret records and things being destroyed and all this. We didn't want it to happen in Connecticut. So Governor Grasso said, look, we're going to make a landmark freedom of information law. And to this day, Connecticut has one of the strongest freedom of information laws in the country. And what makes Connecticut a little bit unique is that in some other states, if somebody has an issue with getting records or they have an issue with getting access to a public meeting, they have to file a lawsuit or they have to go through an appeals process with that agency. In Connecticut, where I work, the Freedom of Information Commission is a separate state agency. The only thing we do is investigate violations of the Freedom of Information Act. So we're kind of like the state police for FOI. I don't have a gun, I don't have a badge, I don't have a cop car, but what happens is somebody would file a complaint with us, and we want to give you advice today so you can avoid that, so that you're not having to worry about, oh my gosh, we got a complaint, we have to go to a hearing, how do we do this? We want to give you the advice so that you do it right. You're doing your work in public and you're avoiding having somebody file a complaint and having to devote time to that and taking time away from the important work that you all do. Couple of basic things about freedom of information in Connecticut. The law, the name is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not about somebody calling you up and asking you all kinds of questions. It's not about somebody saying, why did you do this? Who did this? It's really about providing access. It's really an access law, and it's access to public records and it's access to public meetings. One important thing to note with meetings, I saw you guys had a public comment period there. There's actually no requirement under freedom of information or any other Connecticut law to have public comment. Oftentimes people ask us about that. So I just like to mention that off the top. Certainly it's great, we support it. I think it's important to have public comment if people want to weigh in on what your group is doing. But just know if for whatever reason, you want to limit public comment, or you want to set a time limit, or only items on the agenda, or you want to one meeting not have it, public comment is totally within the purview of your group. Really, again, it's about access. So the law gives the public the right to access your meetings, and that means they can come, they can watch, they can observe. It doesn't mean that they get to interrupt. It doesn't mean they get to interject. It doesn't mean that they get to stand up or unmute themselves and start talking over what you're doing. It's really just that they get to see you guys in action, see you working, making the decisions that you're making. Who is covered by FOI? It's pretty simple with you guys because you are sort of an extension of state government. But basically, any public agency, any department at the state government, any local board or commission, any state board or commission, everyone is covered by FOI and has to follow the requirements that we'll talk about. One important thing I'll mention: I don't believe you guys have any subcommittees, but in the event you ever create a subcommittee, just know that subcommittees also must follow FOI. So just because it's not your full council, if you guys make a subcommittee to take on a particular project, then that subcommittee still needs to follow FOI. It doesn't matter if you call it a task force or a working group or whatever you want to call it is fine. But just know if you're delegating away some of your authority to a smaller group, then that group still has to follow FOI. What I tell people is, you can't delegate away your FOI obligation. So if the council is required to follow FOI, if you create a group to work on something, they still need to follow FOI as well. So as I said, we're going to focus mostly on meetings. So what's required of public meetings? How do you run a public meeting? We'll go through all that. We'll talk a little bit about electronic meetings as well. Some of the new things with that. We'll have some time for questions at the end, but also if as I'm talking, you think of something, I've got the chat up. Feel free to drop it in the chat. Sometimes it's easier for me to address things as we're going, if it's pertinent, then to stop at the end. Subcommittees are public meetings as well. Yes. So if you have a subcommittee, meetings open to the public, you got to do agendas, minutes, we'll go through all that. So first, what is meeting under FOI? I like to take a second to talk about the definition, not to bore you guys to tears, but because there's a few things in there that I think are important for you all to know. So what the law says is that a meeting is any hearing or proceeding of a public agency or any convening or assembly of a quorum of a multi-member public agency, any communication by or to a quorum of a multi-member public agency, whether in person or by means of electronic equipment, to discuss or act upon a matter over which the public agency has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. So there's a few things there, it's a lot of words, but the first thing I like to point out is quorum, and that's really key. Under FOI in Connecticut, what makes something a meeting, whether it's in person, whether we're on Zoom, whether we're in an email, whether we're in a text chain, those can all be meetings. The key thing is a quorum of your board together talking about your board business. If one member is emailing back and forth with Tara, that's not a meeting. If your chairman is talking to one other member, doesn't make it a meeting. Where it becomes a meeting is when you have a quorum of your board together, because essentially you have enough people together to make a decision on behalf of the whole board. So you don't want to be communicating, talking, sharing, doing those types of things with a quorum of your board, because essentially what could happen is then you come to the public meeting and, oh, we already talked all about this. We already decided to do this. We already voted on this. You want to be making those decisions in public. Certainly, as I said, you could talk to staff if you have questions. Less than a quorum of board members can talk to each other. Board members can communicate back and forth with the public. There's no prohibition on all that. The key thing is a quorum of your board. So it's, half plus one. I'm not sure how big your council is, but that's the number. When that many people are together, that makes it a meeting. And as I said, the definition also includes that whether in person or by means of electronic equipment. If you think back for a second, I just said, FOI goes back to 1975. Well, that's been in the law since 1975. And the thing they were worried about back then was people all getting on the phone together, the whole board getting on the telephone together and talking about what they're going to do at the next meeting. So today, it's not really phone calls that we're worried about, but it's emails and it's text messages. So I'll take a minute to talk about that. Sometimes people think, oh my gosh, we can't email each other, right? How do we communicate? Again, think back, the quorum piece. So certainly, individual members can email each other. Where you want to be careful is if you have your entire board or a quorum of your board on an email chain. You can still use email, but you want to limit it really to, topics for the agenda, sharing of information one way. Hey, I saw this article, about what's going on in Massachusetts. I think this would be important for us to know, or administrative type things. What date is the next meeting going to be? I'm going to be sick. My kid isn't, my kid's home. I can't make the meeting. Those types of things. What you don't want is somebody to send out the agenda to everybody, and then people start replying all and talking about the agenda items and weighing in and offering, proposals, that type of thing. You can send out an agenda item to everybody, but what you want to do is you want to say, look, I'm putting this out there for discussion at the next meeting, review it, and then at the next meeting, let's talk about it. Or if somebody has a proposal, here's my proposal, I want you all to review it, and then at the next meeting, we can discuss, and I'll gather your feedback. So it's just important to know you can use, email to communicate, you can have a text message chain with your board members, but you really don't want to be getting into the deliberative back and forth type of conversations and things that you would do at your public meetings, outside of your public meetings. And I know sometimes it can be difficult because of, a board like yours, you don't meet that often. I saw your schedule there, I think it's quarterly, maybe a little bit more than that. So there probably is a lot of work that goes on outside of those meetings. Again, it doesn't mean you can't do the work, but the key thing is you don't want to have your full board making decisions, having deliberative discussions, that type of thing outside of meetings. We'll talk a little bit in a second about the different types of meetings. One thing to know is, you can always schedule a special meeting. If something comes up and you decide this is too important, we need to do something before our next meeting, you can always schedule a special meeting We're meeting entirely remotely today, so you can have a remote meeting if you need to address something that comes up, in between your meetings. But what you don't want to do is start to, have those discussions and make those decisions over email because, oh, we're not going to meet for another month and we need to do something. If you need to do something that requires the board to take action, you can schedule a special meeting and you do the discussion and you take the action in public. So a couple other ground rules for meetings. As I mentioned, the public has the right to attend the meeting, so anybody can attend the meeting. They don't have to have a particular, business before the committee or have any, reason to be there. They're just allowed to be there. They don't have to tell you why they want to be there. They don't have to give their name or anything like that. Meetings can be photographed, recorded, or broadcast. With a Zoom meeting, most of the times people are recording it anyway, but just assume if you're at a public meeting, you could be being recorded. People don't have to tell you ahead of time that they're going to record you if it's happening during a public meeting. So next we'll talk about the different types of meetings and some of the requirements. So there's 3 types of meetings that are allowed under FOI: regular meetings, special meetings, and emergency meetings. Regular meetings are just your regular schedule of meetings that you file for a state board with the Secretary of State. I saw you already posted it for the whole year. You've got all the Zoom links there. That's great. A special meeting, the name is a little bit misleading. The only thing that makes it special is just that it's not on the regular meeting schedule. You're changing the date, you're changing the time. Let's say today's meeting was going to be in person and you guys decided, gee, with the delays in school and all this and the snow and the ice, we want to move it to another date. You could move it to, Friday and make it a special meeting. So the only thing that makes it special is just that you're moving the date and time, and it's not on your regular meeting schedule. The only other difference between a special meeting and a regular meeting is at a regular meeting, you can add items to the agenda at the meeting that weren't on there. So if for some reason today is a regular meeting and there was something that, let's say something came up in my presentation and you guys decided later on in the meeting you wanted to take some sort of action based on that, you could add an item to the agenda and discuss it at your meeting if it's a regular meeting. If it's a special meeting, you can't do that. So if you ever have a special meeting, just know whoever's preparing the agenda, make sure you put everything on there that you think may need to be discussed, and don't leave anything out. You can always decline to take up an agenda item or pass on it or move it on to the next meeting. But for special meetings, you can't add something, to the agenda that wasn't there previously. Emergency meetings, hopefully, you don't have to deal with this. You probably won't, but just know an emergency meeting is an unnoticed meeting. So if for some reason there was something that came up where there had to be immediate action taken, and you couldn't wait 24 hours, that's an important thing to know for special meetings. All that's required is 24-hour notice. So, as I said, we're sitting here and it's, Wednesday at 10:30. You could call a special meeting for tomorrow at 11 a.m. right now. You could just post a thing on the website, we're meeting, special meeting tomorrow. So there's a lot of flexibility to meet, but if for some reason you had to meet quicker than that, you can do it as an emergency meeting. And there's a few ground rules that go with that. One thing, you can only discuss whatever the emergency is. And for regular and special meetings, you need to file minutes within 7 days, post them on the website. If you have an emergency meeting, you need to file your minutes within 72 hours. So you have a shorter turnaround there. Again, probably not something that's going to come up. Special meeting equals emergency meeting. It's a little bit different. The special meeting is the 24-hour notice. Emergency meeting is no notice. So, we'll go through that just in a second. So regular meeting is on your regular schedule. Special meeting is at least 24 hours in advance. You put the notice out there. Agendas for regular or special meetings are required 24 hours in advance. So at least 24 hours before the meeting, got to make sure the agenda is posted on the website. Yeah, you guys are a state agency, so agendas should go on the website, minutes should go on the website. At the local level, there's a little bit more flexibility with that, but for you, make sure minutes are posted within 7 days and the agendas go up 24 hours, at least 24 hours in advance. Next thing I'll talk a little bit about is that there were some additional requirements for electronic and remote meetings. And what I'm going to do, because I'm going to go through some of them, but in case anyone has other questions, we have a document on our website, and I'm going to put a link to it in the chat. So, during COVID, based on the fact that there was that provision in the law that said you can meet electronically, boards were allowed to keep doing their work remotely, which was important, right? We couldn't gather in person, but we still had to make decisions, and we still wanted to operate all the boards and commissions. So what happened was, at first there was an executive order that sort of outlined what was required. And then in 2021 and 2022, the legislature passed some laws and basically said, look, based on what happened during COVID and remote meetings and some of the successes there, we want to continue this going forward. But we also want to set some rules and make sure that, that there still is that public access and public notice the same way that it would be if it was an in-person meeting. So a couple of the different requirements that are a little bit different for electronic meetings. The first one is, I said earlier, agendas 24 hours in advance. If you're having a meeting via electronic equipment, there's an additional requirement that the link or however people access it electronically needs to be up 48 hours in advance. I saw on your website, I think you have the links for the whole year, so you guys are way ahead of the game. So that's not an issue with that. But just know, agendas are 24 hours, but if it's a online meeting, the link has got to be there 48 hours in advance. One thing that's a little wonky with that is you can still have an electronic meeting, a special meeting electronically 24 hours in advance. So if it's special, it's always 24 hours. If it's regular, the link is 48 and the agenda is 24. The other additional requirement is if you have a meeting like we are today, which is a regular meeting of your council, and it's entirely online, in addition to doing the minutes, you also have to post a video recording of the meeting. And that video recording needs to go up within 7 days, and it needs to be on your website for at least 45 days. So you can leave up the full year of recordings if you want to, but also if you wanted to take it down after 45 days, you could do that. And again, it's only for regular meetings that are on your regular meeting schedule, and only if it's entirely virtual. If it's a hybrid meeting, you don't need to record. You don't need to record it. You still can if you want to, but from an FOI standpoint, you only need to record it if it's like today, where we have everyone on Zoom. And again, you still do minutes, even if you have a recording. Minutes are always required. A recording does not substitute for minutes. While we're talking about minutes, one thing that I will that often comes up is I saw somebody talk about you guys had some violations for like 2 years. One thing that is helpful to know is from an FOI standpoint, complaints need to be filed within 30 days of any violation. So I always tell people, I don't care what you did more than a month ago. It really doesn't matter to us. We want to make sure you guys are doing it right going forward. So I wouldn't be concerned about what was done in the past. We'll make sure everything is going is going correctly. Doing it right going forward. So as I said, still do minutes, but what's important to know about minutes is the only legal requirement that you have to have in the minutes is a recording of who was at the meeting, any votes that were taken. And then if you have an executive session, we'll talk about that in a second, but if you have an executive session, you also need to include who was in the executive session. Anything else you want to put in there is up to you. You don't need to go into a verbatim back and forth of every single point that was made. If you have public comment, you don't need to list every single person who spoke and what they said. The minutes are really meant to be, a summation of what happened at the meeting. It's not a substitute for somebody attending the meeting. And if you do post a recording, you could always, have the recording and then keep the minutes more brief. And you could tell people, look, if you really want to know everything that was said, go to the recording. But just know that, you have control over how much detail you want to put into the minutes. Number one important thing with minutes is get them in on time. Don't let, writing 15 pages worth of minutes get in the way of filing them within 7 days, because from our standpoint, the legal issue is, were they filed on time? We don't get into the content of the minutes. Were they good? Were they not? Were they too short? Were they too long? The other thing that comes up sometimes is people will say, gee, how can we post the minutes? They haven't been approved by the board yet, right? They're not final, they're unapproved, there could be changes. You could, if it makes people feel better, you can always say that these are draft minutes, that they're unapproved minutes, that they're subject to approval, anything like that. And then if there are changes, you could always reflect that in the next set of minutes. You could say, at the January 17th meeting, they voted to amend the minutes to add X, Y, Z. So you can always make changes to the minutes going forward, but just make sure that you get them in and you file them on time. Let me see a couple questions here. So some of the things you're asking about someone who wasn't at the previous meeting to approve them, sometimes where things get a little confusing is some of these things are more Robert's Rules types of questions. And there isn't really a state agency that enforces Robert's Rules. So I think for those types of things, it's kind of up to the board, how you want to handle it. We wouldn't have any, we don't get into the weeds on, seconds of motions and votes and points of order and all that type of stuff. Our main concern is that you're doing the work in public and that the minutes are available for public inspection. Not so much about the content of them, who voted on them, who didn't vote on them. Was somebody who wasn't there voted on them, that type of thing. I've seen it both ways. I've seen sometimes where people abstain if they weren't at the meeting. Other times they approve it. Not a concern. The other thing I will say about electronic meetings that's important to know is, hopefully we're past this, but if you remember early on during COVID, there was a lot of Zoom bombing. People were interrupting government meetings and they were taking over screens and they were displaying, pornography and derogatory images and all kinds of stuff. And it's bizarre because it was, happening, there was thing in Connecticut where it was happening at a planning and zoning meeting, and I think the police tracked down the person, and it was like somebody from Washington State or something like that, just looking to cause trouble. So hopefully, that doesn't happen at your meetings. Hopefully, I think Zoom has gotten better about, preventing that. But just know that if something happens in a meeting where somebody's being disruptive, they won't mute their microphone, whatever it is, you can always kick them out. You can mute them the same way that if this was an in-person meeting, you wouldn't let somebody, take over and disrupt the meeting. Same thing applies for online. So if somebody's being disruptive online, you can kick them out. They have a right to attend the meeting. They don't have a right to disrupt your meeting. So just know that going forward. So before we get to executive session, again, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. But those are sort of the ground rules for meetings, how to run them. One thing with agendas that I'll talk about, we'll talk about it more in executive session, but what the law says is that agendas need to fairly apprise the public of what's going to transpire at the meeting. So what I always encourage people is, when you're putting the agenda together, just before you send it off, take 30 seconds and just sort of take off your council hat and just think, okay, if I was a member of the public, would I understand what we're going to discuss there? Try to avoid jargon, try to avoid things that only you guys are going to know what it means. There's nothing wrong with using plain language on the agenda just to make it clear what's going to be discussed. So executive session, if you don't know, basically what it is when FOI was passed, it's all about public discussion and public debate, but lawmakers realize, there's got to be certain things where boards can discuss things in confidence. There could be legal matters, there could be personnel matters, there could be all these different types of things where maybe, it would be in the public's interest to have some of those discussions happening in a private setting. Key thing with executive session is it's for discussion of these types of issues. It's not for taking any action. Any votes that you take need to be taken in public. So you can have an executive session discussion about something, but you cannot vote on anything in executive session. You have to come out and you have to vote in public. So the law says there are 5 different reasons that you can have an executive session. So I'll go through them and explain a little bit. The first is for personnel matters. Probably not something that's going to come up at your council, but typically what this would be is, let's say we're talking about a board of education. If they're evaluating their superintendent, they could do that in executive session. If there's a disciplinary matter involving a teacher, they could, discuss that with the teacher in executive session. So it can be for disciplinary matters, it can be for evaluations, it can be for hiring. Let's say that, I don't believe you guys, I don't know if you have an executive director or something like that, but let's say there was a position that they created and you guys wanted to review, resumes and hiring and all that, you could do that in executive session. The vote to hire the person would have to happen in a public session, but you could do some of the work in executive session. So that's personnel matters. The key thing with that, if you ever need to do it, to know is that the person who's being discussed can request that they have that discussion in an open session. So if, not to pick on Tara again, but let's say you guys were evaluating her and you wanted to decide if she was doing a good job or not, she could say, hey, I want to have that discussion out in public. I want it to be a public session so people can hear, what you guys think about what I'm doing. So if someone wants a public session for a personnel matter, you would need to grant that. Second one is you can discuss any pending claims or litigation. Again, we hope this doesn't happen, but let's say somehow the council gets involved in a lawsuit or the council is considering taking some kind of legal action. You can discuss that in executive session so you don't have to reveal your legal strategy. You can discuss security matters in executive session so that you don't have to reveal security strategy. Again, not something that's probably going to come before you, but the classic example I give is, town hall, wants to discuss where they're going to install the security cameras. They don't need to have that discussion in public, so somebody can't, listen in and hear and find out, oh, there's a blind spot on this door, and now I know that, if somebody wants to break in, that's the door they're going to go through. This one definitely won't come before you, but discussion of sale or lease of property. If the town wants to buy a piece of land and they don't want to reveal their negotiations in public, they can do that in executive session. And the last one is any documents that are exempt from disclosure under FOI. This can include things like legal memos, certain personnel records, preliminary drafts, anything that is, you wouldn't have to disclose via a records request. You can discuss that in executive session in a meeting. If you have an executive session, you need to vote by 2/3 to go into the executive session at the meeting. So you put it on the agenda, executive session, discussion of, whatever it is, evaluation of, employee, whatever you're doing. You want to make sure that you have a 2/3 vote to go into the executive session. Again, you can't vote during executive session. The council can bring in whoever you need for the executive session. So you can bring in staff, you can bring in employees, you can bring in a lawyer, anyone that you need there. The key thing is you don't want to just start inviting in all kinds of people to your executive session. You really want to limit it to people who, there's a purpose that they're there for. You need them there for some sort of expertise. You need them there to ask a question. You need them there to run something by them. Advice, you need testimony from them, whatever it may be. You can bring in whoever you need, but just make sure that they're there for a particular purpose. So that's a little bit about executive session. Then as if this, wasn't confusing enough, and again, not to make it harder on you guys, there's also what we call non-meetings. So the definition of a meeting, we talked about it earlier, and it says it's a quorum, you're together, and you're discussing, board business. But there are certain things that the legislature has said you can do this outside of a meeting setting. Again, most of these things probably won't apply to you, but any collective bargaining matters, you don't need to do those in public meetings. You could do that outside of a meeting. Caucuses at the local level, Republicans on a board of education, Democrats on the town council, they can caucus together. It doesn't make it a meeting. You can create a personnel search committee for an executive level employee. So sometimes a board of education, if they're searching for a new superintendent, they will create a search committee. That search committee, only when they are operating as a search committee, is allowed to do their work outside of public meetings. But eventually it will come back to the public meeting when they want to vote to hire a person or something like that. You can have a staff meeting. This is where it's something, let's say, for example, that, OPM wanted to invite in council members to discuss something that was a bigger OPM project, not related to your particular board or commission. Just because, there's a quorum of the council there, if you're together, but you're not discussing a particular matter before you, and it's more of something that's an administrative meeting, a staff meeting. You guys did this FOI training during one of your meetings, but in some instances, boards will schedule an FOI training outside of a regular meeting. But if we stick to just me presenting to you guys, doesn't make it a meeting just because you're together. And the last one is you're allowed to have what we call chance or social meetings. So this means if you're together for the purposes of, a holiday party, or you're at an event together, or you're, at the Capitol at a luncheon, those types of things, doesn't make it a meeting. The key thing is you want to try to avoid getting into, deliberative discussions about what the council is going to do. it's going to come up, if people see you and they know you're on this board, they're going to come up and they're going to start talking to you and that sort of thing. But you just want to limit it, as best you can, and don't be making decisions and doing the things you would do at your meeting outside of a meeting setting in that social setting or at that luncheon. One thing that I'll mention comes up from time to time is, especially on a board like this where you've got kind of a mix of people, is people often ask about, this is a little bit into the records territory, but personal devices, right? Some of you have state emails, some of you are using personal emails or your work email or your personal cell phone or your work cell phone. The key thing with public records in Connecticut to know is that what makes something a public record is the content of the record and that it relates to the council's business. So there's nothing that prevents you from using your personal devices to carry out your council work. That's totally fine. The thing to know is just that if you're sending emails about what the council does from your Gmail account, if somebody makes a public records request, those could be records that you would maybe have to disclose, depending on the content, if there were any exemptions or anything like that. Same thing goes for text messages. If it's text messages related to council business, those are public records that you may have to disclose, if you get an FOI request. So now that we're on that point, we'll talk a little bit about the records piece. Again, probably not things that you're going to run into too much, but just some basic parameters for you all to know. So the way public records work in Connecticut is, as I mentioned, basically, if it deals with the public's business, it's a public record. And unless there's either a state law that says you don't have to release something, or there's an exemption within our law, unless it falls into one of those two categories, it would be a record that would need to be released if somebody made a request for it. I'll just read the definition here. So public records or files means any recorded data or information relating to the conduct of the public's business, prepared, owned, used, received, or retained by a public agency, or to which a public agency is entitled to receive a copy by law or contract, and except as otherwise provided by any federal law or state statute. So that's where, if there's another law that says you don't give information out, you don't have to give it out. But except as otherwise provided by any federal law or state statute, all records maintained or kept on file by any public agency, whether or not such records are required by any law or by any rule or regulation, shall be public records, and every person shall have the right to inspect public records promptly during regular business hours or copy such records. The number one important thing to know is that if you get an FOI request in Connecticut, the law requires agencies to respond to acknowledge the request within 4 business days. So if any of you on the council get an FOI request, number one important thing, you may not be the one to respond, maybe Tara, maybe somebody else, but if you get an FOI request, don't ignore it. Make sure somebody responds within the 4 business days, because if there's no response within 4 days, somebody can file a complaint and they could say, I made a records request and they're not in compliance because they didn't respond. It doesn't mean the person gets the records within 4 business days, but there needs to be some acknowledgement. And it could be as simple as, we've received your request. We're going to look into it. Somebody wants your emails. Okay, I'm going to look and see what I have. We'll get back to you. Whatever you want to do is fine. It's just there needs to be some communication back to the requester, just informing them that you've received it, that you're going to process it, whatever it is. As I said, the law allows for inspection of records and also requests for copies of records. Far more frequently, you're going to see the latter. Somebody's going to send you an email and they're going to ask for a copy of an agenda, a copy of minutes, a copy of a report, whatever it may be. There's no magic words that people have to use to make an FOI request in Connecticut. If it's a request for public records, it's an FOI request. If somebody emails you and asks you for something, treat it as an FOI request. If somebody wants digital records under the law, if they request digital copies, they're provided at no charge. So if somebody wants emails, PDFs, things like that, they're provided at no cost. In the event you have paper records, I doubt you do, but if there's records that exist in paper form, state agencies can charge people 25 cents per page for paper records. Again, only for paper. Anything that is electronic is made available at no cost. As I said, people don't have to use a special form or special words or anything like that to make an FOI request. They send you an email, they send you a letter, anything like that. That's an FOI request. Couple important things to know on the records front. We talked about, for example, how public comment is not required at meetings. Well, when you get a records request, it should really just be a request for copies of records that you have. There's no requirement that you have to create records that don't exist. There's no requirement that you have to do any research or, create a report or do any analysis. What I always tell people is, really it's somebody's asking for copies of what you have, and they have to do their own homework. If somebody wants to look at, the work that you've done over the last couple of years and make some sort of conclusion, that's on them. It's not requiring you to do any extra work or do any analysis or even answer questions. That's one that comes up sometimes. Somebody says, why did the council do this, or who authorized this, that type of thing. Not an FOI request. If somebody sends you a list of questions, you don't have to answer them. You could always point them to a meeting and say, look, this is the meeting where that was discussed. If you want to learn more, you can watch the meeting or you can read the minutes of the meeting. So it's really just somebody asking for copies of, records that you have as they exist. Number one question I get all the time: how long do we have to fulfill an FOI request? It would be great if there was a specific time I could give you. If I could tell you it's 2 weeks, it's a month, it's a year, whatever it may be. But the challenge is what the law says is just that you need to provide records promptly upon request. So then the number two question I get is, what does promptly mean? Again, there's not really a clear answer. As you can imagine, early on in the life of the law, there was a lot of people wondering, okay, gee, what does promptness mean? How do we be prompt? Who's being prompt? So the best I can do is the commission had a advisory opinion some years ago where we listed the types of things that we consider when we're trying to decide if someone's being prompt. So if somebody made a records request of the council, these are the things we would be looking at. We would be looking at the volume of records that they requested. If somebody wants years worth of emails, we understand that's going to take longer than somebody wanting, a copy of an agenda. The amount of personnel time necessary to comply with the request. How many hours is it going to take for somebody to do this? And kind of dovetailing with that, the staffing of the agency, right? You guys are a council with, you've got one, I'm assuming one staff person who's working with you who's probably doing other things too. So, we know that you guys don't have a full, complement of people who are there to fulfill FOI requests. So, we understand that it's something that's going to maybe take a little bit more time than a bigger agency. The key thing with records requests is you need to try to balance that against all the other work that you're doing, and it's a challenge. At the FOI Commission, believe it or not, we get records requests. Sometimes we get people who are unhappy with the decision that we made and they're asking for copies of emails or copies of decisions or what have you, and part of my job is to have to fulfill those requests. So I can tell you from personal experience, it's hard sometimes. I've got a bunch of trainings, I've got calls, how do I do all this? Again, the key thing is you really want to try to balance it. What the courts have said is that FOI is a primary duty of every public agency. So, you can't give it you can't give FOI requesters second-class treatment. You have to try your best to balance that with all the other work that you're doing. A couple of tips I can give you: if somebody makes a big records request, you can always ask them to narrow it. If somebody wants 5 years of records, you could say, look, I'll give you the last year. Why don't you look through those and then tell me if you need more? You can always give people records on a piecemeal basis. You can give them a little bit, every week. Here's a few records you asked for. I'm going to work on the rest of them next week. Whatever you need to do. If it's a big request, it can be burdensome, but there's really, you can't just say, no, I'm not going to do it. Or well, I guess you could, but the person filed a complaint, oh, I didn't have the time to do it, would not be an excuse before our commission. So, what I find, another thing I do at the office is I read the complaints that come in. What I find is from records requesters, kind of the worst thing you can do is acknowledge the request and then just go radio silence and just stop responding. You don't want to give people false hope and tell them you're going to do it in a week if you can't do it in a week. But if you do get a records request, don't view it as adversarial. Try to work with the person. Try to figure out what they're after. What questions do they have? What are they really trying to answer? And you may find that you can assist them by giving them far less than what they asked for. Sometimes people ask for everything under the sun because they don't really know exactly what they want to know. But if you talk with them and figure out, oh, gee, they just want to know about this topic, and we did a report on that, you can always give the person the report, and then they don't need to read 5,000 emails to figure out what they want to figure out. So those are that's a brief overview of records and meetings. I do want to save a little bit of time for questions. If anyone has questions, if you want to drop them in the chat, if you want to unmute yourself and just fire away. As I said, the key thing for you guys, I think, to be thinking of is, making sure you have your agendas out there, for public notice, making sure you do the minutes of the meetings and that you, that you file them on time. Especially as I said, it can be difficult for a council like this that doesn't meet quite as often, but your votes need to be done at meetings, your discussions need to be done at meetings. If something comes up in the middle of meetings, you can always schedule a special meeting. Only requires 24-hour notice. You can schedule a special meeting, everyone on Zoom. So if something comes up and you're thinking, gee, emails are going back and forth and you're saying, seems like we got to do something about this, you could always say, hey, let's schedule a special meeting. Let's just find a time when everyone can hop on Zoom, even if it takes 15 minutes. Really that's the way you should be doing it. You should be doing the voting in public. You should be discussing, your issues in public. And I think with especially for some, councils like this, with the flexibility of the remote meetings, I think it provides a good balance of where you can do your work in public, but it's not like you guys have to book a conference room and get everyone to Hartford together at the state capitol, to deal with a small matter. You can just schedule a special meeting and take it from there. I do see we have one hand raised, so I'll let Carol weigh in with her question.
Hi, thank you for the information. Can you talk to us a little bit about, because we do have a lot of subcommittees, we do schedule those. How would that, do those need to be posted on the same website as, the meeting links, or how would we make those public?
Yeah, so you should be posting agendas for your subcommittees. If they're virtual meetings, post the links to the Zooms for the subcommittees. Do agendas, do your minutes, wherever. If you have a website on OPM, you could post them on there. I know how sometimes it can be burdensome, especially with the subcommittees. But again, under the way the law is structured, is if you create a subcommittee, it's a new public agency that is, same rules apply. Same things with, same rules about a quorum apply. So if you had a subcommittee of 5 members, you could have 2 members together talking, but when you get to 3, it's a quorum and it becomes a meeting. So treat your subcommittees the same way as as your full committee meetings. You could always schedule fewer of them if you feel like it's becoming hard to keep up with it all. But yes, under FOI, for all intents and purposes, a subcommittee is the same thing as a full committee. What you can do that's allowed, and what I call it, is you can always assign homework to people. So if you have a full committee, you can, without creating a formal subcommittee, you could say, we're going to have Carol and Jennifer go research what New York is doing, regarding topic X, and then you guys come back to the next meeting and present and discuss. So you can sort of farm out work to smaller groups of your council, but when you create a subcommittee, then it becomes a new public agency that has to follow all the different requirements.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Russell. This was extremely helpful. Anyone else have questions that they want to drop in the chat or come off mute?
I'm going to put my phone number
Thank
and
you.
my email in the chat. And what I always tell people is, if you're really unsure about anything at all, please call. That's my job, is to answer the phone or answer emails. So even if you think, gee, I think I'm right, but I just wanted confirmation, happy to do it. Again, I don't think you guys are a council that needs to worry about a lot of people filing FOI complaints, but you never know. I mean, sometimes that can happen, and we'd rather you avoid it and not have to deal with as much as I'd love to see you all, you'd have to come to Hartford and come to our offices and have to come to a hearing and all that. So again, thank you for your attention. Call or email with any questions. And the other pitch I'll make is, if any of you are involved, locally on boards or commissions or anything like that, we do these training workshops for anybody who wants them. We'll come out to your town council meeting in the evening if you want it. So if you felt like this was beneficial and you feel like you're part of another group that could use it, give me a call or send me an email. We'd be happy to schedule something.
Thank you so much. This was very useful. We appreciate your time, and hopefully we won't have to reach out a whole lot, but we know how to get a hold of you if we do. So
Exactly.
thank you so much.
Yeah, take care. Have a good rest of your day.
All right, you as well. Thanks.
Bye.
So next on the agenda is updates from OPM. And I'm just going to start off. Russell, we booked him for first thing as that was the time that he had available. So I apologize to the members of the committee for not introducing and doing introductions first. But we wanted to do that with Russell first. So my name is Tara Vines, and I am new to OPM. I was hired as the lead planning analyst for autism services. It was a position that was created out of legislation in Public Act 23 137, which is House Bill 5001. If you guys were familiar with that from the last session. My background, just to give you a little bit about myself, I moved to Connecticut from Pennsylvania. There I worked as a clinician for over 20 years with adults and children with autism and intellectual and developmental disabilities. I was a clinical director for the central region of the state in our IDD waivers, and also was a clinical consultant to the Bureau of Autism Services for several years prior to moving to Connecticut. And then after moving here, I worked at the USED, the Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, as a research associate for a few years prior to gaining this position here at OPM. So super excited to be here. And we would like to take a minute to do some member introductions. So Jim, I'm going to hand it over to you if you want to start.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Jimna Miller, born and raised here in Connecticut. I joined the committee, I think, like 16 or 17 as a parent of a child with autism, young child with autism, and became co-chair a couple of years ago with Yana, and who she can introduce herself next. But it's been my pleasure to serve the council, and I'm super excited to have OPM join us and help direct us and guide us, and we can move along the Public Act and getting the waiver funded. So I know that's the population we serve, and I'm super excited to roll up my sleeves and dig in. Yana?
Hi, I'm Yana. I'm a self-advocate. I receive services from the waiver. I've been receiving services since, good Lord, June 2009. Yeah, 2009. He started receiving services from the waivers. So I've been with the waiver since the DDS days, and I'm also a self-advocate, and I'm a historian by trade. I'm actually starting graduate school today to further my education. Hopefully get to New York City.
Very exciting.
And I have something that I want to bring up, and then we have time.
We have a time at the end where we're going to do announcements. Would that be okay if we hold it till then?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Yana.
You're very welcome.
And then the newest, another new member is Kim Meerman. So Kim, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Kim Meerman. I am a parent of a young adult now on the autism spectrum. And also professionally, I am a special education administrator at CREC, supporting our programs, a wide variety of which, but our largest program supports students with autism. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Also, Stephanie is a new member.
Good morning, everybody. Stephanie Bozak. I am from the Department of Children and Families. I'm a psychologist by training, so I've worked with this population. Prior to the current role that I sit in, I was the liaison for DCF, working closely with DDS and DSS for the youth who were duly involved or transitioning into those agencies. So I have some background in working with this population specifically. My current role is overseeing the children's mental health unit here at DCF, which sits under the larger community behavioral health division under Frank Gregory. So very excited to be here.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I'm just going to run through the list and go kind of. So Marcia, are you still on? Do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yes. Hi. You want me to introduce myself?
Yes, please.
Oh, hi. I'm Marcia Eckerd. I'll turn my. I don't look great yet, but anyway. I'm trying to. Oh, there we are. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcia Eckerd. I'm a psychologist in private practice via telepsychology and via SIPAC. So I'm actually in private practice in about 36 states at this stage of the game. I do a lot of, I've done a lot of work with children. I also do a lot of work diagnosing undiagnosed adults. And I've really enjoyed being on this session in this council. I think I'm the only one from Fairfield County. And so, I just bring our little piece of the state here. Thanks.
Thanks. Melissa Hoon.
Am I on mute? Oh, hi. Hi. I just joined the council back in November. I am an LCSW. I am a therapist and working in Rocky Hill. I work primarily with individuals, adults on the autism spectrum. I am involved with the waiver, and I see adults on the autism spectrum who are, I see them individually. I do family work, and I also currently run 7 groups a week to meet the needs of the population. I also am really looking to increase the gatherings that I've been doing that I call meet and greets to get young adults together to meet one another.
Thanks, Melissa. Andrew.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Usually that's a preference to most of the committee, except in this moment. So I'm Andrew Comaro. I am here as a person, an adult on the autism spectrum, along with Yana. We are an approved autism waiver provider. I do a lot with helping others provide resources and just I do a lot of different things in addition to I check a lot of the boxes as to how I could be here. Mostly that is so it'd be very hard to kick me off. And I'm very sarcastic. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Next is Lynn.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lynn Rickey. I'm president at Hospital for Special Care, which has a large service area for children with autism at this point up until 22, inpatient, outpatient, partial hospital. I'm also the parent of a 27-year-old young man with autism. So a little bit of lived experience as well. Thanks, everyone. Been on the council for, I think, 10 years at this point.
Thanks, Lynn. Lois?
Hi, I'm Lois Rosenwald. First and foremost, I'm the parent of a 46-year-old, it's hard to believe, 46-year-old man with ASD. I'm also retired Director of ASR and founder of ASRC, Autism Services Resources Connecticut. We're proud to say that we worked very, very hard to get this waiver in place. So I've been involved with this committee and the committee before for the pilot and developing the services since the very beginning. And hope that we can, I'm really happy to see OPM involved at this point, and I'm hoping that we can really move the agenda forward. It's great to see Melissa Hoon on this committee. I think Melissa is going to have an awful lot to offer, and it's great to see her here.
Thanks, Lois. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Hanlon. I'm a licensed professional working in the field of autism. I am a board certified behavior analyst and a licensed professional counselor. I've been working with children and adults with autism for more than 3 decades. I've been with the waiver program. I'll join Lois. I've been with the waiver program since the very beginning when it was a pilot, and I've sat on this council since the inception, and I'm also the parent of a 19-year-old with autism.
Thank you, Carol. Carrie?
Morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Carrie Sasu. I sit on this council as a representative of an institution of higher education in the state. I work at Southern Connecticut State University, currently in the role of interim dean of our College of Education. But my background is as an educational psychologist, having worked within schools as well as within private practice with individuals with all different, representing all elements of neurodiversity. I think more importantly, as many people have also added, I am the parent of 3 children, one of whom just recently turned 16 and has autism. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Sarah?
Hello, I am Sarah Schlegel. I'm a developmental behavioral pediatrician at Connecticut Children's, and I have a specific focus and interest in transition to adulthood. So this is a perfect match for me, and I joined the committee, I believe it was November 22. So I'm fairly new as well, but really excited to be part of this work. It's just so critical for my patients.
Thank you, Sarah. Julie?
Just turn my camera on. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Wolf. I, like Carrie, am on the committee as a representative of an institution of higher education, but also wear different hats. I'm a clinical psychologist at the Yale Child Study Center in the autism program there. I'm the associate director of our developmental disabilities clinic. And I also work on a number of different research projects related to autism. And I also have a brother on the spectrum. And I think I've been on the council about 5 or 6 years now. So welcome, Tara. We're excited to have you in this role.
Thank you, Julie. Kathy?
I am Kathy Marchioni. I'm a bureau chief in the Bureau of Rehab Services, which is part of the State Department of Aging and Disability Services. And in my program specifically, we help individuals who have all disabilities to get back to work, start work for the first time, advance in their careers, transition from school to work, everything employment related. And of course, the individuals we serve include individuals on the spectrum. And I've been on the council a long time. I can't tell you exactly how long, but a long time.
Thank you, Kathy. Brian, are you still with us?
Here, good morning, everybody. Very nice to meet the newer members and see familiar faces as well. My name is Brian Klimkowitz. I'm the Special Education Division Director at the State Department of Education. Coming into my 7th year now this spring. My previous experience is as a paraeducator supporting students with autism. I've also worked as a special education teacher, supporting students with autism, both in the public and private setting, as well as in residential facilities, before becoming an administrator in Connecticut prior to moving to the state. Also here is Dory Papa, who is one of our, Dr. Papa, who's one of our educational consultants at the Bureau of Special Education. And Dory will be, in some circumstances, the designee for the Connecticut State Department of Education for times that I have conflict as well. So Dory, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Hello, everybody. As Brian said, I'm an education director with the Connecticut State Department of Ed, Bureau of Special Education. I am also the CSTE contact for autism. I've been with the Bureau of Special Education going on my 6th year. Prior to that, I started as a paraeducator with DCF USD2. And then I was a teacher at USD2 and later on an administrator principal at Solnit North and assistant principal at Solnit South until I joined the Bureau of Special Ed almost 6 years ago. Thank you and nice to see everybody.
Appreciate you both being here. Krista from DDS.
Trying to get on camera. Hi, everyone. I'm Krista Ostaszewski. I am the Health Management Administrator for the Department of Developmental Services. I oversee the 3 DDS waivers. I've been on this committee maybe 1.5 to 2 years. Always appreciate the discussion and always appreciate any information that I can bring to this conversation regarding supports and services for individuals that are supported through DDS. Thank you.
Thanks, Krista. Jennifer?
Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm Jenna Badamarco. I work for the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. I'm the Director of Operations for the statewide Young Adult Services Division here. So we work with young people between the ages of 18 and 25, some of whom have autism as well as co-occurring major mental health issues. I am a licensed clinical social worker by background, and when I was in the private sector, worked with children and adolescents with autism and other psychiatric disorders, and also have family members with autism, so bring that perspective as well.
Thanks, Jennifer. Anne?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Giannat. I'm with the Connecticut Department of Public Health. I'm the Title V Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs Director for the state, and we run the Connecticut Medical Initiative and school-based health centers. Within the Connecticut Medical Initiative, children with autism is one of our top 3 diagnoses that we have. So I've been involved with the council since a very long time, way back, since before it was technically a council. So I've always enjoyed working with the group and focusing on this population. I too am excited to have OPM involved and coordinate the services that are out there. I think there are a lot, but there's still so much to do for families and connecting them and making it the services more valuable. So thank you all.
Thanks, Anne. Judy.
Hello, I'm Judy Dowd from OPM Budget, and I was waiting to hear what Lynn and Lois and others said about how long they'd been here, because I really have no idea, but I started like when they did. So, and I'm really, really excited about OPM taking the lead agency responsibilities. I'm so hopeful that we will make a lot of progress in moving services along. So anyway, it's great to see everybody.
Thanks, Judy. And Iris, I know you're here on behalf of Mary Beth, but do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Iris. I am from the legal division of the Office of Partnership. And today I'm here on behalf of Attorney Miller. She's the staff attorney, and she is the Office of Early Childhood Commissioner's designated to discuss. She couldn't be here today, but I will be reporting back as what was discussed at this meeting. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So next, I was just going to give a few updates from OPM. So as you all know, that this is going to now, the committee's now housed in OPM Human Services Division. And I will be the lead contact from OPM for the committee, and plan to work closely with all of you. We are currently in the process of reviewing the committee's bylaws and updating that. So at our next meeting, please be prepared to kind of do a review of the bylaws, provide your feedback so we can approve those moving forward. Also, we are working on a orientation manual to help orient new members who may be identified coming in. So if you have any suggestions for information that you feel is important to receive moving forward, I know we have some new members, like myself included, but also for those of you who are veterans to the committee, if there's information that you feel would be beneficial and useful, I would appreciate if you could shoot me an email and just let me know what should be included beyond, obviously, you know, statute and how committee members get assigned and all of that kind of stuff. I will be including. So I'm also hoping to have a rough draft of that for the March meeting as well. So welcome everybody's input on that. Also, another item that we will need to do for the March meeting is in statute, it's there are 3 chairs. So one is a parent of a child, one is a parent of an adult, and one is a person with autism. So we currently have Jimna and Yana serving as co-chairs. So we will need to nominate a third person and vote on that in our March meeting. And it would need to be somebody who's a parent of an adult with autism to fulfill that position. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, that that will need to be. So if you're interested in putting your name up for that, please let me know so that we can take a vote on that in March.
I just had a question about that. I might be
Sure.
misremembering, but I thought this had come up before, that one of the 3 spots I thought was more open, and that it was like, I might be misremembering, but that it was either a parent of a child or a parent of an adult for one spot.
It is, in the current, there are 3 positions: a parent, a person with autism, a parent or guardian of a child with autism, and a parent or guardian of an adult with autism.
Okay, was that changed recently, or maybe I'm just misremembering how it used to be?
Everything was updated when it moved over to OPM. I'd have to look back historically and see if that was different, but I'm looking at Public Act 23-101, which was enacted last year for membership of the council.
Okay, thank you.
And I can pop a link to that in the chat as well, so everyone has that for their access.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. If you give me just a second, I can pull that up.
And Tara, for everyone on the call, when you say that according to the Public Act, we need to have a parent of an adult with autism, can anyone from the public apply for that, or does it have to be a member of the council has to apply for that? We have a large group gathered here today. I just want to be crystal clear, because I know we have a lot of people that do want to participate and they do want to help.
It has to be one of the 2 people who were nominated to be part of the committee that are fulfilling the role of parent of a child.
So they have to be current. So they have to be current council members.
That's correct.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, just get that clarified. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm looking at it, sorry, what you just sent, and it says not less than 2 of the persons should be a person with autism spectrum disorder or a parent of a child or a parent of an adult. So my read would be then that this third one would not have to meet any of those, if I'm reading it correctly.
Correct. Like Kathy Abercrombie self-appointed herself during secret backdoor stuff. That's how this kind of initially happened. And she was one of the 3, I think. So that's my understanding as well.
Yeah, it says provided not less than 2 of the persons elected as chairpersons shall be, and then it lists those 3 categories. So I think since we already have 2 who meet those categories, the third wouldn't have to have any restrictions, from my understanding.
Yes,
Mine as well.
Thank you. So now that I read that part of it, I agree. So if anyone on the committee would like to be fulfill that role as the co-chair, then please let me know, and I will put those names up for vote in March.
So are we forming or are we using the existing nominating committee, or is that no longer in effect? Because I know
that's no longer in effect because these are appointed positions. They're not nominated positions.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm just trying to, again, make sure we're getting off on the right foot here.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So,
Okay.
And if you are interested, please reach out to me so that I can make sure that we have a copy of your nomination letter, and that we make sure that all of those requirements are fulfilled. Any other questions on co-chair? Okay. Seeing none. The other big focus for the committee this year is going to be the implementation of House Bill 5001, Public Act 23-137. The council is named in several sections of that legislation as the committee that will be looking to review information that's coming out. So OPM did put out an RFP for section 2, which is looking at employment, and section 4, which is looking at IQ and level of need as far as eligibility is concerned for the waivers. So an RFP went out, and we are gathering information, and once we have a contractor or prospective contractors to conduct those studies, we will be looking for council input as a stakeholder in that work, and getting that feedback. We do not have a contractor identified at this time. So I will continue to update all of you as we move forward with the RFP for that. I also created a survey to get kind of everyone's input on what they would like to see the council focus on moving into this year. If there's, specific legislative priorities, and, kind of get some feedback. I know that there were subcommittees prior with all the information that we just learned from Russell. I wanted to get a poll to see if the committee felt like subcommittees were beneficial moving forward, or if the work that we're doing can be done in the larger group. Yes, Lois.
I think subcommittees are extremely important, given the fact that this council meets really, only a couple, every other month. It certainly doesn't meet enough to really accomplish anything. And I think without subcommittees, that's just not going to happen. So I think we really need to look seriously at what those subcommittees should be, given, you know, what our top issues are. But I don't think we need a million subcommittees. I think we need to, I think, you know, we need to really focus in this year to really try to accomplish stuff. Our housing committee has been working, you know, hard to get off the ground. And, you know, we just don't have enough people for probably more than a few subcommittees, people that can really do the work.
Thank you. And I will say too, moving forward, if you are doing any subcommittee work, I will need to know about, you know, if you were planning any meetings moving forward. Obviously that will need to be posted on our website. Agendas will be need to be made, etc. I do I will be the person doing all of that, so posting and such. So if you are meeting or have something scheduled, please make sure that I am looped in and know that moving forward. Andrew?
So what if we just didn't call them subcommittees and not enough people showed up to make it a quorum, which is almost essentially guaranteed? Then everyone could keep meeting as is. We're not going to restrict anyone. We're not going to invite more people. I mean, how many people do we need for a quorum? It's way more than show up for any of those meetings. So let's just not call them subcommittee meetings, and let's just make a note that if more than a certain amount of people show up, it would need to stop, etc. I don't think that would ever actually happen. So how about let's do it that way? That way we could basically keep the format we have of the subcommittee meetings never accomplishing or voting on anything anyway. So I think gymnast. Anyway, I think that's just the perfect way to do things. And as long as we just keep a note that if we have more than this amount, that the meeting couldn't happen.
I appreciate your opinion, Andrew, but I'm going to have to disagree and say that, you know, I think moving forward, we want everything to be done in the public. And I feel like we do want to accomplish tasks. And I think that if we do that from the beginning, the right way moving forward, that's going to make us hopefully a little more productive. So I am happy to, that is my role here at OPM. Okay. I'm happy to help committee members with the nuances of getting those meetings posted and taking on that responsibility in my role. So moving forward, I appreciate that that's the easier way to do it. But I am happy to take on that responsibility. So, and would prefer to do it in the public.
Sorry, just not used to that around here. Appreciate it.
No worries. So feel free to reach out. And I just saw that somebody's asking for an email and the survey link, and I will be posting that in just a minute, but I will provide that information again. If you don't have my email, I will pop that in the chat. So I'm going to, so at your leisure, if you can respond to this survey posting now, and then that way I will have the results to give to the committee in March, and we can discuss at that time what subcommittees and what priorities we would like to set moving forward. And the March meeting is currently set as a hybrid meeting. So we will be meeting in person at the Legislative Office Building, but I will also have a Zoom link and a virtual option available for those who cannot show in person. And I plan to record it as well. If I know Russell said that those don't necessarily have to be recorded, but I will be recording that meeting. So if any of you can not attend that March meeting, you would still have access to be able to watch it at a later time. And I'm also gonna drop my email in the chat if anybody needs that. So I would also gonna post a link to Public Act 23-137, so you can see how the council is mentioned, so that when you are filling out that survey, you can kind of see what has already been identified for us as priorities. Any other questions for me specifically, OPM's role, any other clarification needed moving forward? Yes, Lois.
I'm interested in knowing, we've been researching states surrounding us, to really take a look at what they're doing. And Pennsylvania that's my home state. And I was really proud of it when I took a look at what they're actually doing. It's amazing. They are so far ahead of the curve. And I wanted to know, did you have an opportunity when you were there to work with adults at all on the spectrum?
Yes. So I was part of the Bureau of Autism Services, and I was in the clinical arm. Our adult autism waiver was built on the foundation of ABA. That is my background. So our clinical team had oversight in most aspects of the waiver, especially with any specific programs. We were administering that waiver in essence. Our Pennsylvania system was run different because we're a county run system for the IDD waivers. While I was there, we also added autism to the eligibility criteria definition for with no IDD diagnosis as part of our IDD waivers. So we expanded autism to accessibility across the state for our services and supports. So that was a big portion of my work. So I was involved with supported employment, all clinical services, and waiver administration, quality review, all of that for that adult autism waiver.
Yeah, it would be interesting to have you really talk about, what Pennsylvania does to educate this council on, what they're doing. I mean, they really started very early on servicing our population. And anyway, it was really impressive.
Sure, I'd be happy to pull some of those resources and information together for the council so you could have an overview of what the system looked like there.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Any other questions?
Yana has one.
Okay, Yana.
You're on mute.
There we go. So what I want to bring up is that I think our main priority needs to be housing. And I keep on saying this, that we're at the precipice right now of a major crisis. We have families and individuals who are afraid to talk about what will happen in the future, who won't discuss it. It's to the point where I was talking to my case manager and she said that she's thinking they're gonna have to have individuals and families sign waivers soon, that they know that we have no housing option in the division, and that if they're refusing to talk about this, then the only place for their individual is a homeless shelter if something happens. And we're nearing that precipice, and we really need to act, and we need to act fast. Otherwise, we're gonna have vulnerable people on the autism spectrum in the homeless shelter system. And I don't think that's a good solution to this problem. And it's frustrating because the iDash program, which is everyone writes about, everyone flawed. We were supposed to include our individuals, and yet our individuals are left out of IDASH, which is not fair. And we should not be getting the short end of the stick. And we need to act, and we need to act now, because the time for talk is long past. We're going otherwise, I keep saying this, we're gonna have our individuals in the shelter system because we have so many of these families who just don't want to face facts that the parents are in their 80s, 70s, 80s, and they're not going to be around forever. And we have individuals who are too afraid to pursue living on their own. And we really need to act fast. And I think one thing we can look at bringing back and really educating our families about is the CCHs, community companion homes. I know it's offered over at DDS, and I think the CCH would be a good in-between option. If someone's not yet ready to live on their own in an apartment, the CCH would be a good option to get them out of mom and dad's house. Because otherwise we are going to have a crisis where our people are going to be in the shelter system because we have nothing to offer them in terms of housing. And I really don't want to see that happen. I really don't want people to have to deal with this in moments of crisis. I really want people to do what I did and planfully move out while mom and dad are still there to help and support. But I really don't see, unless we start moving forward with housing and start pushing for our individuals to be included in these housing supports, I don't see any other future for our individuals other than, oh, it's a crisis, mom and dad are no longer here, homeless shelter. When they're going to be targeted, and it's not going to be pretty. So we really have to start doing something.
Thank
Because
you.
anyway, I'm gonna stop, but we really need to act now, and we need to make sure our people are included. I hear newspaper articles, they're bragging about it, but why is it only people with intellectual disability? Our people matter too. We may not need 24-hour support, but we matter, and we deserve to have housing supports. We deserve to have them yesterday. And that's all I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna keep saying it. We're on a precipice now.
Thank you, Yana. I share your concerns regarding housing, and I know that is a major issue. So definitely, I will put that as a priority for you as we look to plan for our activities for this year.
Yeah. The way I see it, we're in a car dangling on a cliff, and either we're gonna fall into that cliff, or we're gonna push the car back and survive. That's what we need, and we need to push that car back. Otherwise, we're gonna fall off the cliff. And who's gonna be the victim here? Individuals. I really don't want to see our individuals in the shelter system.
I agree, 100%. Stephen, did you have your hand raised? Oh, you're on mute still.
Yes, I did. I was just going to say the housing subcommittee that we've got together right now has been working, as Lois said earlier, pretty actively and trying to look at the state surrounding us. And Mike Olson has been just an invaluable resource to us to get us the information regarding what's going on in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts. Carol, who's on our committee, also has done a lot with Massachusetts and other places. So pulling that information together right now in the last couple of months, over the holidays and stuff, everything's been a little bit slower than usual, but we're catching up at this point, and we do have a lot of information, which when we schedule our next meeting, we're going to have to go through. Much of it includes housing, and that is our focus, and our focus is to get that going now, as opposed to later. And we have lots of programs that we can look at and we can follow, and we can hopefully develop something for our state based on our waiver system and that kind of thing. So we are working on that, Yana, and we can use all the help we can get as I'll remind the commission. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if somebody does want to join the commission or does want to join the subcommittee, contact Lois or contact myself. We're kind of trying to get this thing rolling. Contact Tara, of course, and we'll see. We'd be happy to have you on the subcommittee.
Thank you.
I would like to just add one thing if I could, Tara. I agree with everything that Giannis said. We see it, at ASRC up close and personal. We talk to those families and have for a long time. In looking at what exists around us, it's really, it's depressing. It's really depressing to see how much further along many of our states are. And it's no longer, it's no longer a time for a lot of talking. It is time for action. This has to be what we do this year. So that's why I'm still, as a retired person, still here. So I just have to say that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think at least if we can get a plan off the ground, so we can have some kind of emergency plan. So what if, God forbid, we have an individual whose mom and dad are in their 80s and something happens and the individual is no longer able to live with their parents and they have nowhere to go? What can we do to keep people out of the shelters? Keep our individuals out of the shelter. Yeah, the FAVAR model, that's what I was saying. And for our individuals, it's much easier because we don't need 24-hour support.
Except
And
no,
our individuals, it needs to be, we don't need, not all of us need 24-hour support.
you do, but some of you do.
Yes, none of you, but it needs to be transit oriented because of the problem that I have with the Bear Woods. They're wonderful, but they're out of reach of public transportation. And for our guys, it needs to be transit oriented.
Well, you have to look across the spectrum. And there are people that do need more services than others. This really needs to be a discussion, I think, that takes place, with the council as well. There need to be people, involved in this discussion. But anyway, I'm not going to take up I know there's an agenda to be followed today, so I'm not going to take up any more time, but I would like to see it on the agenda.
Absolutely. So I will already make a note that housing is going to be on the agenda for March. If anyone has anything specific, I know Stephen, I don't know who was heading up that subcommittee, but if you want to touch base with me, and if we want to have a meeting, I can send that information out to the group. And as we decide moving forward what our subcommittees will be in March, sounds like housing is already going to definitely be one. But as we confirm all of that in March, then we will, you'll have the opportunity to join those subcommittees then as well.
Right. Yeah, Lois and I are the ones that are kind of heading this up. So any meeting would be fantastic. I'd be open to it at any time.
Okay. We can touch base to schedule that and get that moving forward. So we're kind of flowed right into the general questions and announcements portion of the agenda. And I know, Julie, you had something you wanted to share. I had a note from the Yale brochure.
Oh, yeah. I just wondered if we could circulate the brochure, but I can comment about it too. So I just wanted to mention, because I'm not sure if everybody knows that through our research studies at Yale, families can get a free evaluation for autism. So the different studies have different criteria. So the families would A, have to be interested in participating in research, and B, be eligible for whatever the study is. But if they are eligible, we do a brief clinical evaluation as part of almost all of our studies. And families can get a written report, recommendations, usually from a psychologist, very similar to what we offer through our clinic. So I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of that resource, because I know there are waiting lists at a lot of clinics. We have very little wait for research, so it's a really good option, especially for families who've already had a clinical evaluation and they're just looking more for like an update on how the child's doing, or some recommendations around like a time of transition or something like that. So I just wanted to share that resource with the council.
It's a great resource. I think I hold the record, Julie, as doing the most. I'm up to like 14 trials. I've been diagnosed with autism through Yale 4 times. I thought somebody might have bribed Julie to say I'm not autistic so that I'm kicked off the council, but that hasn't happened yet. So I'm still here. But no, it is a great. Do I hold the record, Julie?
I don't know the record. I appreciate
want
you outing
to.
yourself because of HIPAA. I wasn't allowed to out you, but I appreciate you putting in a good word for our studies.
And I recommend
yes,
it to so many other people too. Yeah.
We appreciate that. Yeah, you've been a champion, Andrew.
Julie, could you post how to get a hold of you with questions about us?
Yeah, so people can email me. It's just julie.wolf@yale.edu. I circulated a brochure that I'm happy to share with people. And then I can also connect you with our research coordinator, who's the one who talks with the families, does all the intakes and coordinating schedules and things like that.
And I didn't have a link to the brochure, Julie, but I do have the digital copy that I can email out to the committee.
That would be great. Thank you.
And it's autism@yale.edu, right? Is the email to
I think
inquire?
so, yeah. So Bella is our intake coordinator, and I think that's the right address. You would probably know better than me, Andrew.
Hey, Julie, is there we have a member of the public asking if there's a link to the electronic brochure. Tara has the actual PDF, but is there a public link you could put in the chat?
I can put a link to our website. So I work with Dr. McPartland, so I can put his website. We have other research, researchers as well, but that would be a good starting point. And then if you contact us, we can also put you in touch with, other folks. So I will put that in the chat.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you. Gemma, were you going to do the waiver updates? Or
we do have materials that Michael had sent over, but if he's on the
I had my hand up.
Oh, hi, Yana.
Sorry. Hi, Yana. Go ahead.
So I wanted to announce to share the Bushnell Theater has a lot of wonderful supports for folks on the spectrum. They also have sensory friendly and relaxed performances where the lights are up, people are allowed to move around. They have chill out spaces in the theaters. But we also have a resource kit that families and individuals are welcome to check out at patron services for typical performances where they have sensory headsets, social stories, other tools that you can use. And these are available free of charge at Bushnell's patron services or customer relations desk for any performance. All you have to do is give them your license or photo ID, and this kit supports will be given to you. We have Frozen coming to the Bushnell next month in February, and I know that a lot of folks will want to go see that. Unfortunately, we're not doing a sensory friendly performance, but we do have these kits available. I can post the link to all of the tools. We have a sensory bag that's available at customer relations, where there's noise canceling headphones, earplugs, sunglasses, a fidget, and communication supports. There's also digital supports available on the website, communication board, a choice board, social story, a visual schedule, and people can take a break in our lobbies. And if you need to go into the theater early, we also allow people with disabilities to enter the theater early before we seat the general public, so that people have a chance to get comfortable in the theater before it gets very crowded. All you have to do in order to access that early access seating is to ask an usher, which is one of us in the gray vests, or a floor director, which is someone in the gray jacket, and we'll let you in to get seated early. So I'm gonna post the link, and if you have any questions, my supervisor at the Bushnell is the one that you reach out to. I'm gonna post the URL for yeah, you can reach out to my supervisor, Kat, at the Bushnell, Kat Vidala, and if she can help. I'm gonna post, this is all of the options that we have, our typical performances. And then I'm gonna post a page where we have all of the relaxed performances listed. A lot of those are more aimed toward children.
Thank you, Yana. I just saw that come through the chat.
Yep, there are some stuff like the ballet on the 21st, Sunday, April 21st. The ballet theater company is doing Snow White, and the 11 o'clock performance is going to be a relaxed performance. There's also going to be a hip hop and drumming workshop at the Bushnell on Sunday, February 25th at 10 a.m. Those are both part of our relaxed, sensory friendly.
That sounds fun. Thank you.
I'm going to put the sensory friendly page on there too.
I see Lori, you have or Lois, sorry.
Yes, this is new business, am I right?
Yes.
One of the topics that I think we need to look at as a council is a lack of providers that are now existing in Connecticut. We have a huge problem. It took forever, I believe, and I'm not sure they're done yet, getting the new people on the waiver, because one of the biggest problems was the lack of providers that exist. And it's really an issue that we've talked about ad nauseum over the last probably 15 years. And we have to begin to address. Without addressing it, I don't know how we can grow the waiver. We need the people to do the work. And one of the suggestions we've had along the way at various times and various committees that we've worked with in the state is using the community college system to begin to train people to provide these services, not just for our folks, but across disabilities. But I'm sure there's a number of different answers, but we have to address it. Because without it, I just really don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, Lois, I agree with you. I'm having so much trouble right now with getting staff. In fact, I've been doing a lot of this grad school prep on my own and with my BCBA, even though it's something that the staff is supposed to do, because I haven't had staffing. The agency that we're going through right now, they're short staffed. They don't have the staff to do the hours. So basically, I'm doing a lot of the stuff myself, which is great. I love to be independent, but we do need the staff. But we need to pay our staff better, have better perks for doing the job.
Well, we have to begin to look at all of the issues around it, but but we need to be training people. We've always had a problem, even when there was more staff available, with training and a lack of training. So I think that, this is something that we really need to be addressing, and it needs to be sooner than later.
Thank you. I am going to, we only have 5 minutes left and I need to get to waiver updates. So I want to do that next. And then if we have time after, we can continue this conversation. So is Michael?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
We
Thank you.
currently have 2,045 people on our wait list. 13 people were added to the wait list in the last month. We have 330 assigned cases to case managers. 203 people who are fully on the waiver. We removed 14 more people from the wait list this month. And we removed 3 other individuals who were referred back to DDS due to current IQ scores. That's pretty much for the waiver. We've got the 11 case managers in place, and things are moving forward.
Great, thank you. We did receive data from Carolyn as well. They were not able to be here. So I will send, if everyone's okay due to time, I will send that out as part of the minutes and attach that PowerPoint presentation to the minutes and publicly post that. Is everyone okay with that? Any objections? Okay.
Additionally, I would just say, Mike, we have Michael's report in Microsoft Word, so we can circulate that as well. He does a great synopsis and a great summary, but I know people want to see those numbers written. So I think we can, Michael, with your permission, and Tara, if you could include that. That way we're not all scribbling furiously for those numbers.
Absolutely.
We can circulate that to the committee, to the council. Thanks.
I know there was a few other hands raised. We have about 4 minutes left. Did anyone have any closing comments that they wanted to make? Okay, Jim, and I'll hand it back over to you then for.
Okay. If there's no other business, I'm getting ready to adjourn. Thank you all for sticking through this, sticking with us. It's great to see all of your faces. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in person, weather permitting, in March. And I think we're really on a great track to have a really great year, a productive year. Thank you. Special thanks to Tara for leading a great discussion, and welcome to all our new members. It was nice to meet all of you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in March. So I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you again, and hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.